The Disciplines Essential in the Spiritual Aspirant, Part 8, Sri Muruganar, translated and presented by Robert Butler.
நிறைமால் நெருங்கிய நாயான என்னை இறையாயிடுதல் எவ்வாறாம் இறைவனே இறைவனே நிறைமால் நெருங்கிய நாயான என்னை இறையாயிடுதல் எவ்வாறாம் இவ்வாறாம் இறைவனே இறைவனே தித்தியிலா தீமனத்தை தித்தியிலா தீமனத்தை அன்பால் திருத்தி அன்பால் திருத்தி அன்பால் திருத்தி அது தித்திக்குமாறு இட்டு தின்னு இறைவனே தித்தியிலா தீமனத்தை அன்பால் திருத்தி அது தித்திக்குமாறிட்டு தின்னு தித்திக்குமாறு இட்டு தின்னு இறைவனே இறைவனே
How might I, a mere dog of delusion replete, offer myself to you, my Lord, as prey to eat? So reform with your love this evil mind, that nowhere any firm foundation finds, and swallow it down, having made it sweet.
Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramana. So we'll get started today with Muruganar's Neṟi, or discipline, number 22. And then please go ahead.
கடவுளும் குருவும் இருவரும் உண்மையில் வேறல்லர். அருளே வடிவாய் இருத்தலால் அவரது சங்கல்ப பூர்வமாகவே அடியார் பாற்றிடு அருள் நிகழ வேண்டும் என்ற நியதி சிறிதும் இல்லை. கடவுளும் குருவும் அருளே வடிவாய் இருத்தலால், கடவுளும் குருவும் இருவரும் உண்மையில் வேறல்லர். அருளே வடிவாய் இருத்தலால் அவரது சங்கல்ப பூர்வமாகவே அடியார் பாற்றிடு அருள் நிகழ வேண்டும் என்ற நியதி சிறிதும் இல்லை.
Robert.
God and Guru, in reality, the two are not different, are of the very form of grace. There is therefore not the least necessity for them to intentionally bestow divine grace upon devotees through thought, sankalpa in Sanskrit.
Good. So with regards to this Neṟi, there are 2 points that we are seeing. The point one is that God, Guru, and grace are not different. So with regards to this, there is a quote from Bhagavan recorded on 9th February 1936. Robert?
Grace is the self. Because of the false identification of the self with the body, the guru is considered to be with body. But from the guru's outlook, the guru is only the self. The self is one only. He tells it the self alone is. Is not the self your guru? Where else will grace come from? It is from the self alone. Manifestation of the self is a manifestation of grace, and vice versa.
Right. So God, Guru, and grace are not different. And then the second point we can infer from this Neṟi is that the bestowal of grace is an automatic process, most effectively done through silence. On 18th November 1936, a devotee asked Bhagavan, why does not Sri Bhagavan go about and preach the truth to the people at large? To which Bhagavan responded,
This preaching consists in mounting a platform and haranguing to the people around. Preaching is simple communication of knowledge. It may be done in silence too. What do you think of a man listening to a harangue for an hour and going away without being impressed by it so as to change his life? Compare him with another who sits in the holy presence and leaves after some time with his outlook on life totally changed. Which is better, to preach loudly without effect, or sending forth intuitive forces to play on others?
yeah. So do you have any other comments on this?
I think we should see if anybody has anything to say. I think it's quite clear what's been said.
Yeah. Bhagavan is
I
making
do have
it clear here. Bhagavan is making it very clear. Does anyone have any questions on this Neṟi?
no question. I do have a comment.
Yeah.
It's powerful for one's own understanding. If one seeks something, it's like an invitation. So if I go to what I want in enlightenment, there's an opening there. If someone comes at me with it without invitation, then that tends to be something less authentic.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's what I want to say. Thank you.
Yeah. You're welcome. Thank you. Yes, we have to go to the Guru always. That's why Bhagavan as well as Ramakrishna Paramahansa, they just sat in one location. People went to them. No, that's one of the hallmarks of a true Guru.
I think, just like Stephen said, it's there's a very simple saying for this: if you've got the goods, then there's no need to put on a show.
Yeah, exactly. Right. The more drama you see, the more suspicious we have to be. Okay, so Neṟi 23, Anand.
நேரில் காணப்படும் உயிர்கள் பால் அகமகிழ்ந்து அன்பு பூண மாட்டார் காணப்படா கடவுளின் பொருட்டு காதலாய் கசிந்து உருகல் விந்தையிலும் விந்தை. I'll repeat again. நேரில் காணப்படும் உயிர்கள் பால் அகமகிழ்ந்து அன்பு பூண மாட்டாதார் காணப்படா கடவுளின் பொருட்டு காதலாய் கசிந்து உருகல் விந்தையிலும் விந்தை.
Thank you. So if you see those Tamil quotes from Muruganar, they are in his own handwriting, which is well preserved. Robert?
That those who refuse to joyfully bestow their affection upon the beings they see and meet firsthand will melt and dissolve in love for a God who cannot be seen is indeed the wonder of wonders.
So
I think we've
a bit of
spiritual progress above our duty to other people. If we find ourselves doing that, we know that we've taken a wrong turning somewhere. We need to go back to our basic values and value the people around us before we can embark on a task like this.
Yeah. So those who refuse to joyfully bestow their affection upon the beings they see and meet at first hand will melt and dissolve in love for a God who cannot be seen is indeed the wonder of wonders. So there are a couple of points that we see here in this Neṟi. One is that instinctive love for others is a sign of spiritual progress. And there is a quote from the famous sage Thiruvallur from South India. Go ahead, Robert.
Yes, it's a very nice quote. Those with no love in their heart, the joys of life shall not know. Just as on a withered tree in the desert, no blossom can grow. We haven't given the Tamil, but that's very pretty too. But it's a very clear illustration of
Right. That instinctive love for others is a sign of spiritual progress. So that love for others should be natural.
I think when we lose the fear and the self-protectiveness of our ego, and naturally our love for others just blossoms. We can't make it blossom, but the more we reduce the ego, the more our natural love for others just exudes from us, as it were, you know, it just comes out.
Right.
Try.
And then the second point that we see in this Neṟi is that spiritual pride is a warning sign in sadhana. You know, and we see this a lot. So Muruganar is bringing all these practical points here, which you see around us. That a lot of times people get into a spiritual path, but then too soon pride takes over. There is an illustrative quote from Sri Sadhuvam. Robert?
If a person takes renunciation, sannyasa, with the desire that other people should honor and revere him, that renunciation, sannyasa, will only destroy his true happiness. The abstinence or austerity, which is to be observed in this world by a pure renunciate, a sannyasi, who has given up all worldly attachments, is only to refrain, even in the least, from becoming a victim to the disease of self-esteem or pride.
Yeah. So the abstinence or austerity, which is to be practiced in this world by a sannyasi, a renunciate, who has given up all worldly attachments, is only to refrain, even in the least, from becoming a victim to the disease of self-esteem or pride. And a lot of times we see this, you know, they start out with genuine interests, and I see so many so-called God-men, and in whom once people start falling on their feet, their pride and ego goes up through the roof. So that is something we need to keep in, you know, be careful about. And in our own progress, well, we should never be thinking, I think, you know, so we are in the best path and all those things. All of that could just contribute to ego. So just focus on our own spiritual practice. Does anyone have any questions on this, Neṟi? Okay. If not, we will go to the next Neṟi. Go ahead, Anand, please.
அகந்தை மமதைகளை எவ்வளவுக்கெவ்வளவு தம் இதயத்தினின்று அகற்றுவாரோ அவ்வளவுக்கவ்வளவு இறைவனுக்கு அபிமுகமாக அணித்தாகின்றார். அகந்தை மமதைகளை எவ்வளவுக்கெவ்வளவு தம் இதயத்தினின்று அகற்றுவாரோ அவ்வளவுக்கவ்வளவு இறைவனுக்கு அபிமுகமாக அணித்து ஆகின்றார்.
Which means, Robert?
To whatever extent they drive out from their hearts thoughts of I and mine, to that same extent shall they turn towards the Lord and draw near to him.
So to whatever extent they drive from their hearts, thoughts of I and mine. To that same extent shall they turn towards the Lord and draw near to him. Again, we see a couple of points in this Neṟi. The first point that Muruganar makes is one of the biggest barriers to realization is the notion that we and the self, God, Bhagavan are different. That should go away. Now, that perceptual difference, that ananya, that the sense that God is different than us should go. With regards to this, well, let's look at Upadesundiyar verse 24, Robert.
The nature of their being, God and individual souls are one and the same. They only seem different because of the adjunct awareness, the I am the body sense.
Yeah. இருக்கும் இயற்கையால் ஈச சீவர்களும் ஒரு பொருளே ஆவர் உந்திப்பெற உபாதி உணர்வே வேறுந்திப்பெற. So in the nature of the being, God and individual souls are actually one and the same. They only seem different. Again, it's a seeming difference because of the adjunct. Adjunct here refers to the I am the body sense, the upadi.
In other words, the ego.
Right. Any questions on this point? Okay. Now let's look at the next point that that we see here in this Neṟi. The attractive power of the self is always present. Our failure to feel it does not mean that it is absent at any time. So Robert found this quote from Path of Sri Ramana, chapter 8 by Sri Sadhuvam. It's probably I would say this is the best introductory book to Bhagavan's teachings. And I'll let Robert read this quote. It's really very well explained by Sri Sadhuvam. Go ahead, Robert, please.
If the rust is removed from a needle lying in a magnetic field, it will naturally be attracted to the magnetic source. Therefore, we should not think that the magnetic force comes into being only after the rust is removed from that needle. The magnetic field in its nature always possesses its full power of attraction, does it not? Although the needle was all the while lying in the magnetic field, it only responds to the pull of that magnetic force to the extent that the rust is removed.
Yeah. So all you really need is to remove the rust, right? So the needle is all the while in the magnetic field, but it responds to the pull of the magnetic force to the extent that the rust is removed. And Sadhuvam continues. Go ahead, please.
Similarly, all the striving to abandon the outward perspective and to place the focus on self-attention is analogous to the removing of the rust from the needle. So the result of our efforts is to be brought under the power of the light of the heart, the magnetic field of grace and jnana, which shines, seizing and swallowing up everything in the spreading rays of the self. Those who are spiritually extreme and mature will not resist this power, which is the light of the heart, and will willingly succumb to its control. So basically, through self-attention, that's what we're doing. We're removing the rust.
Right. So the results of our efforts is to be brought under the power of the light of the heart, the magnetic field of grace and jnana, which shines, seizing and swallowing up everything in the spreading rays of the self. Those who are spiritually extremely mature will not resist this power, which is the light of the heart, and will willingly succumb to its control.
It should be pointed out that we shouldn't resist it, but we can't grasp it either. So it's a very delicate place to
That is not good to grasp.
without to grasp it.
Yeah. So I will stop right here and see if there are any questions on this Neṟi.
If you go back to the Neṟi itself, 24, the Tamil as well as the English versions, in particularly the Tamil version, it gives a plural like Ahande Mamadegalai, Ebalava Kebalave. So as you have it there, yeah.
Yeah.
No, here the heart. Before you remove this, before you remove this slide, the light of the heart at the very last line, and the heart here is the one, as we understand, the place where the spurna or the self resides. Whereas the heart that is used in the Neṟi itself, 24, says, as much as one removes the sense of possession and ego from the heart, to that extent they become qualified for the grace of God.
Really, not the heart there, doesn't it?
Yeah, so there is God there is a heart, and then there is an ego, and then there is Mamadai. So would we need to clarify our thoughts about the terminology here?
Yeah, I'll let Robert respond to that. Go ahead, Robert.
I don't really see any discrepancy there. The heart with the capital H is just the self, and the heart mentioned in the first part is the mind, really, drive from our hearts, in the sense, drive from our minds. Does anybody else see it? Anything confusing about it?
No. Okay, I guess not. Any other questions or comments? So this
is Stephen.
Yeah.
This was a lot for me to kind of digest and respond to, because it really resonated.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to kind of simplify it in my head to kind of digest it a little bit at a time. And what I got really goes back to Anand's simple description where love can dissolve the ego. And so when we have these heart-centered conversations, the sibling, or what goes along with the heart, is the love. And that's what these last couple of slides have kind of generated for me. So that's my comment.
So you said love can dissolve the ego. Is that what you said?
Anand can repeat it, because the sense and sentence and how he said it really resonated with me. And I'm not quoting him. What I'm saying is that's how it landed for me.
Yeah. Well, that's good. That's the correct statement. And I would say, go even further, the only love can dissolve the ego. And then now we need to define that love. That love is the love to attend to our own self. So Swatma Bhakti is what is going to dissolve the ego. The love to attend to our own self will dissolve it. And there has to be that love. And it has to just take over. Otherwise, initially when we start to practice, we're doing it, sort of forcing ourselves to do it. But soon, once we get the taste of it, the love for it increases and increases. And eventually, get that love itself will propel and help us in our pursuit of self-realization.
Yeah, can I make a comment?
Sure.
The love that is eternal and infinite, which is what the self is, real self is, appears to be disintegrated, like Akhanda getting khanda, like a whole appears to become parts. So the love that we normally give to others, like your child or your wife, that's a piece of that whole. So
Right.
so the way I saw it and still see it is because the love that is integral and purna, full in your heart,
Mm-hmm.
has the power to make you, the more you begin to focus yourself on the Puranam or the internal self, it could be either way. It's difficult to say which comes first. The more you develop, the real, self-realization efforts and so on, if you begin to develop your internal, integral, Purna, full love, the more it will make you look at the world itself, each one of the various packages of love, like the disintegrated or apparently disintegrated existence of love outside you, the physical you. So they all begin to look more and more like part and parcel of your integral love. This is as best as I can put. That is what appears to be distinct and different in the form of plants and whatever, all the the jivas, the beings that you see in the outside universe. They all begin to join together like a pieces of a puzzle, or even, that's not a good example. They all become more and more integral. The more you yourself, at a very practical level, begin to, it's not practice of love, that's why I say the more you begin to do self-realization, the more your own, uncontrollable feeling of love to others begin to take place.
It's
Because
like
the Purna wants to become Purna, and so we develop that force.
I don't know if you, a good example is like light coming into a prism and then all the different colors come out, but they're all the light, aren't they?
Yeah.
When they come back together, you wanted an illustration. So that was one.
It's like a big ocean, and the waves and the droplets. Eventually, we are beginning to, the more we begin to see the real nature of us as ocean, the more we will begin to embrace the wave and the droplets, etc., as ourselves. So we begin to, oh, this is me too. This is me too, right? The plant is me. So that is what I mean. That love, you can feel it. Yeah, those who are able to enjoy the self will automatically be able to enjoy the world as a form of love. In fact, the previous neṟis also, in a way, the 23 also says the same thing. Those who cannot find love in other uyirgal here means external objects. They cannot, to say that I love God is a parody. I mean, it's a paradox, or no, it's
doesn't go together.
Funny, yeah, it doesn't go together.
Yeah.
So, did it explain it okay to Stephen?
Yeah, that is exactly in the line of thinking that I'm understanding and want to express. This is breaking down that myself, the guru, and the Bhagavan are all one and the same.
Yeah.
So once that prism hits, that light hits that prism, then all the colors come out. And I've been living in a few of those colors, not recognizing that all of the colors I possess, right? And so this is powerful in understanding that coreness of what the love is that I've gotten for the last, 3 or 4 weeks on these Saturdays. Once I got that concept of understanding that love is at the level of ego such that it can dissolve it, that's an access.
Right.
That's an access for me to understand that ego and self-awareness is not my only tool. Love is another tool for me. That's just how it is in my head right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, so self-awareness, it helps me in that whole attachment where ego's attaching to this or attaching to that. And self-awareness helps me with the detachment. But now I have this other access called love, which is something more natural for me. And if I can exercise that, then it supports me in my detachment.
So, as we practice more and more Atma Vichara, the self-love increases, and then that love propels you to practice more and more. So each is complementary to the other. It's just it's a positive cycle. They're not necessarily different, but at some point you'll see that they're both one and the same.
Yes, I agree with that. However, if I'm building something,
Exactly.
I can't eat the whole thing at one time. So it's just
Right.
a piece,
To start with, it's okay to look at it from two different angles.
Right.
And,
With
each human being has his own predilection, right? So, I mean, you may start with the one and you may use the other as a tool. And because both are mutually complementary, but at some point you'll realize that both are one and the same.
Yeah. Thank you.
You're welcome. So with that,
a quick comment and a question in terms of practicing it in real life as well, right? I think that statement was very powerful when it said that the instinctive love towards others is a sign of spiritual progress, right? So what happens is in our day-to-day lives, I think it was Satya or someone who said our immediate kith and kin, where there's an obligation that the natural base in which you have communication with these folks are more oriented towards love. But in our day-to-day work, etc., when we talk to other individuals, minor arguments could become a source where the love is not that natural. That's the challenge, right? If we are able to not get perturbed by some of these conversations we have with people out, how do you are there any simple steps or something which you in your mind you instill where you can approach these things in a much better way?
So that is the Ramanastra, the weapon of Ramana, which is self-attention.
Yes, when you find yourself arguing or in conflict, you just turn back in and you see that really there's nobody arguing with anybody. There's, then you disappear and the person you're arguing with virtually in reality disappears. It all goes. And once you turn back and dwell on your own being, it just evaporates. But it takes a long time. It may take many, many years, but you just keep trying because you see the triggers and you see it's starting now. I will turn back. I will turn inside. And then you find when you turn inside, the other person, they lose their focus of anger towards you because you're no longer projecting. And it's very hardly noticeable, but it gets stronger and stronger until you get to the point where, like Bhagavan, your very presence just brings people to a place of total serenity. And that can happen to all of us, but we must practice and do that.
So,
yeah, sorry.
Robert, it's like a seesaw, which at least for me, my own personal experience has been like
hard.
exactly.
But the more you,
or will start being weighed down this way, and one day the whole seesaw will land on
That's
the ground.
right.
The other end will, you know, or you know what I mean?
That's
This
right.
will stop seesawing eventually.
so the more you practice, Srikant,
Like I was saying before, of like we're swinging on a swing, and the swing is the mind and senses. If those ropes are cut, the ground is the self. We land on the ground, and we're in the self.
Yeah.
But yes, there will be the seesaw, many, 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 many times.
And Robert, actually, you know, to continue your point, I'm sorry if I'm taking too much time, Kumar.
go ahead, finish it up.
You know, at least in computer science terminology, right? So you have certain things where it's real time in nature versus some where, you know, you have a batch process. That means that you have enough time to react to someone. But I think where we really, at least my experience has been that when things hit real time and at that moment, you know, that buffer, if you have, at least, you know, the sense will prevail that, you know,
Yes.
you'll find a better way of responding to the other person. But when it comes to real time, it's very difficult.
Very, very subtle. You just have to catch it in your interactions with people. You catch it, and you immediately, intuitively, it's not a thought because it's very fast. You see what you're doing and you come back. It's very much like the process of, they say when thoughts arise, don't follow them. But most of us, we follow 5 or 6 before we come back down. But if you can do it at the very moment the first thought arises, usually it's a thought of, I want something, I need something, somebody needs to do something, I'm angry with somebody, and you can catch it.